I said I was going to talk about failure hierarchy a little bit, and to me this is a really important part because most people pay some attention to foundational data related to asset records and spare parts records. Do a fair job of that. I don't think anybody does a great job of that. I think a lot of people try to do that on the fly or do it without a methodical approach and so on. But certainly I think it's true that more attention is paid on asset master data and inventory master data than on failure hierarchies. And my view is this is a significant opportunity that where master data and good data integrity can have dramatic impact on business performance. So in essence, what I'm describing here is when a work order is conducted or even when it's opened, a work request might be opened for some reason, and eventually the work is, the problem is identified and troubleshooting begins and a repair is done. The root cause is eventually discovered and a remedy is applied. And most systems, including eMaint, have the ability to, in a hierarchical fashion, report, pick failure codes, failures, causes, remedies, if you will, lots of different ways to describe the different levels of a hierarchy like that, usually during the closeout process of a work order. And a lot of people have not put a lot of good thought into what those codes in those various tables should look like. My view is that they most certainly should not be, for example, a failure code in and of itself. That table shouldn't have every failure code for every possible piece of equipment in the plant. What would happen typically is in the closeout process, nobody's going to scroll through pages and pages and pages of failure codes to go find the right one. You're going to end up getting a handful of easy-to-find failure codes that are more generic and really not analyzable by the reliability engineers. On the other hand, if you make it too short a list, it's too generic. It may be easy to find the appropriate code, but it would have to be so generic to apply to so many different classes of equipment that it would be in many ways meaningless from a reliability engineering analysis perspective. So the functionality of the best systems out there today, including eMaint, is provide you context-sensitive fields at each level of that reporting structure where the system knows the work order was opened up against, let's say, a centrifugal pump, and the first set of choices are sensitive to the fact that this is a centrifugal pump. So it's a much shorter list, manageable list, and you can choose, for example, a problem code off of a manageable list related only to that class and subclass of equipment. And then once that problem code is chosen, the next level of reporting might be cause, and that list of causes would be context sensitive to the previous choice. And remedy at the third level in a three-level reporting system would also be sensitive to the previous choice. So I have an example here of an axial pump, and I'm not going to go through it in great detail. It's several pages long. But in essence, here an engineer did a failure modes and effects analysis on an axial pump and came up with a handful of problems here, different failures at the outermost margin of the this outline that you're looking here at the left-hand side of the screen. So, for example, there's the problem code up there called drive belt and or sheave failure. That's a problem. And there would be others at this level of the hierarchy that would show up on a problem list. And then that problem has a handful of causes, the next indentation in, and you can see those are listed as various causes that have been analyzed. And then each one of the causes has remedies that could be used to solve that problem. So the hierarchy, or let's say a failure hierarchy or a failure modes effects analysis that may have been done or should be done, particularly on critical assets, can be used to feed the failure reporting system in the CMMS system. This is a little bit of a continuation of that list. It just goes on, and there's lots of different problems and lots of causes and lots of remedies that some group or engineer went to great pains to create this analysis, and my view is it has multiple purposes. And one of the primary uses, in my view, is not the obvious one. It's to feed the failure reporting system in the CMMS system. So to me, that's master data. That's foundational data, and that has a dramatic impact on equipment reliability improvement, because now we have data that's analyzable and actionable that reliability engineers can really sink their teeth into. Now, kind of wrapping up here, why can't we build it as we go? Years and years and years of history, in essence, really establish the fact that if we are putting in a new system and we're going to extract the old data from either the old system or a myriad of different legacy systems, we're going to rely often on our IT people to do that. Those people are good at what they do, but they don't really understand the technical aspects of the data that's in all of those fields. Lots of people make that mistake in simply mapping and converting data, and then they say, we know we're going to have some problems because we had some quote-unquote garbage in our old system, or our old system only had our rotating machines and our stationary equipment. Our instruments are in a different system, and our electrical equipment is in a different system with the electricians, and we're not going to bring all that stuff into the CMMS. And those are all mistakes. But some people go in with their eyes open and say, well, I know that's a mistake, but eventually we'll get it all consolidated, and eventually we'll get it all fixed. And the reality is it never happens. So I think companies that are serious about master data, feeding transactional data, feeding KPIs and measurement and analysis and decision making, recognize that, again, as the name implies, foundational data has to be an important prerequisite for us to be able to elevate standardized best practices across the enterprise for asset management. I mean, we might know what best practices are for asset management, but it's certainly true that without solid foundational data and data integrity that's maintained over a long period of time, we're seriously handicapped in being able to deploy those practices. And if we go through the trouble of culling through the lack of integrity in our data, where we may come to the right conclusions, again, I've said that 3 or 4 times, but it's going to take us a lot longer to do so. And if it's more difficult, it's less likely to be done. So my view is that there has to be a serious effort made to create a business case for why the data in the company is a valuable asset that really needs investment and support, and it can't be looked at as, you know, a single line item on a big EAM implementation project. It's critical and strategic to the process. And my view is it has to be funded properly, resourced properly, and done correctly, as painful as that is. And the dividends are going to be tremendous, or the costs are going to be tremendous if it's not done over the course of a long period of time. And then you have to have a system in place that maintains the integrity of that data, so that as changes occur, there's as automatic a process as possible to update master data appropriately. This is kind of a kludgy slide. I don't really like this slide. I didn't have enough time to clean it up. I apologize for that. But in essence, what we're trying to do here is lay out some basic steps of a good data integrity plan. And I think you have to look at dedicated roles and responsibilities both at the site level and at the enterprise level. I think there has to be executive sponsorship. That's an overused term, but it applies here as much as anywhere else. It's absolutely necessary for the executive to understand that this is an investment that's going to pay dividends, and it can't be shortchanged. There have to be data standardization rules, some examples of areas where you want to have those rule sets established, those taxonomies, if you will, established up front, and then adhered to, applied across the data sets. You've got existing data. You know, there's half a dozen different ways to go about getting the existing data fixed and complemented with missing data. put a plan together to do that, and then and seriously consider standardization across the enterprise, not just allowing this to be a plant-level focused item. I think this is one of those items that is not negotiable at the plant level. I think nowadays we see companies standardizing on their EAM or CMMS platform from an application perspective. The data standards also need to be there, and without them, lots of the enterprise-level results that we showed earlier on are not possible, including something simple as resource or people fungibility. Can I move somebody from one plant to the next inside my company and plug them into a familiar environment in terms of our information systems and our strategy and our data standards? And if the answer to that is no, I'm somewhat handicapped at an enterprise level to optimize my business. That's a very narrow example, but there are dozens and dozens of those things that you can't do without standards across the system. And then metrics, measurement of the process of cleaning the data are critical. So it's not just measuring the quality of the data, and that's important, but it's also measuring the progress of the cleanup effort. And both sets of metrics need to be part of any data building plan. And then finally, the sustainability pieces. Even during the cleanup effort, things are going to change in the plant. How do we keep track of those changes so that by the time we go live with our new data in the system, it's not already out of date? And so even during the data building project, management of change has to be applied also to the data, and then that management of change process needs to be living even beyond the implementation of the new set of data. So conclusions, I think in my view, and hopefully a little bit of ammunition here in a relatively short period of time, you would tend to agree, or at least consider the statement that data is a valuable asset to the enterprise. I think more and more people are starting to recognize that. It's absolutely clear that executives intuitively know that they have a problem with data being used for good information and good decision making, and they know they have tons of data and more of it being accumulated every day. They know there's a problem here. I'm not sure it's a clear realization across the globe at the executive management level that the data about the assets is an extremely valuable asset in and of itself. It is, in my view, and there are many executives who do believe that. So that's a good beginning of a trend. So that data, I mean, you could read for yourself, some of these conclusions. It's really required for good decision making and high performance. That it's a hedge against even the brain drain problem that certainly is a palpable, recognized issue in the executive boardrooms around the world. This is, for me, a way, I think, to link onto a known, understood problem that's being resourced at the executive management level for the benefit of our CMMS system and the data in it. Let's look for what the executives are worried about and see if we could make linkages to those programs in order to be able to properly fund and resource our data. And that whole brain drain issue is one of those good examples. So it's basically a critical success factor for company success, in my view. And I think when you have the conversation with executives in even very, very large corporations, it's common sense. They may not have had the conversation before, but if you have that conversation, basically people sit back and say, that makes a lot of sense. I can see all the linkages, and I could appreciate the impact on my business related to something quite simple that I really hadn't given a lot of thought to. So my view is we here now have to help those people appreciate this, and that's in some ways that's what this seminar is about. So that's it. I'm prepared to take some questions. I guess it went longer than I had intended, but happy to take questions, Rona, and turn it back over to you.